If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel.
If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel. I'm your host, the Innkeeper, and this is our live call and talk show all about the Wheel of Time. We're back here in another studio configuration. That's right, everybody. I know this one looks really familiar. That's right. It does look familiar, doesn't it? That is to say, we're still in the process of building out what's going to be the new studio. And we noticed last week, or was it last week or 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, our new Innkeeper also had that nice wood background. We realized maybe we want to still hold on to that a little bit and make sure it feels like we're in the inn. So we may keep some of this. We're going to try to differentiate it a little bit, but I know you're all going to ask, is that the new studio? And it's still a work in progress. That being said, thank you very much for showing up tonight. We're talking Wheel of Time Deep Dive. That's right, Wheel of Time Deep Dive about the Ageless look, slowing, and the Oath Rod. I want to maybe, before I introduce my wonderful guest, just remind those of you that are here about our spoiler level. And I want to say that this show does contain spoilers. That's right. These aren't huge spoilers, but they are kind of things that you find out much later in the books. So if I would say, maybe I'll ask my guests what they think from a book standpoint of when to actually be watching this episode. But if you don't want any spoilers, tonight's not your episode. Again, anything Wheel of Time Deep Dive around here is going to spoil the book. So I just wanted to warn you. With that being said, without further ado, let me welcome my two wonderful guests, one of whom is new here at the Dusty Wheel. Welcome to the Dusty Wheel, Pevara and Morgan. How you both doing?
Good. Fantastic.
You ready for this? Ready to start talking the Ageless look? Do we already know the answer? Like, I wonder, Morgan, when I proposed this show to you, where you're like, yeah, the Ageless look. You knew all the answers already? Is that how it felt?
I mean, I knew some of the answers already. I was actually wondering, like, who suggested me for this, but...
Oh, actually, I think... Ooh, that's a good question. Well, maybe Anas will take credit for this one. I thought I was like, Morgan... I haven't talked to Morgan in a while. And I know Morgan loves to get into a deep dive for the Wheel of Time. So, I don't know.
I'm here for it. I'm right here.
Okay, awesome. And Pevara, first time here at the Dusty Wheel. How you doing?
Very excited.
Good. And this topic, how much... I don't want to call you out here, but did you dig in? Did you look into some of these quotes? Or did you come, or were you kind of like, I'm just going to take whatever we have and just give us some opinions about it?
I went on this little website called Theoryland that you might have heard of.
I've heard
I
that
looked
one.
through that a little bit, yeah. I learned a couple of new things just looking through the Theoryland, the 13th Depository, trying to study up for this.
Oh my gosh. Hopefully you'll bring in some Linda quotes from 13th Depository. That is one resource I did not look into, and now I feel stupid. Hopefully I will bring in most of what Linda has there, but feel free to interject as we go. Again, as you're watching, we'll open the call lines probably about 45 minutes into the show, like we normally do, and start taking some questions. But I want to dig into this topic, and we're going to start with the ageless look. And for those of you watching, if you've ever seen a Wheel of Time deep dive video we do, yes, we're going to be going through about 16 different quotes. We're going to cover some Robert Jordan. I think I said the 3 Robert Jordan quotes from his notes, but maybe 5 or 6 I think I ended up with. I just kept going. I sent all of these quotes to my 2 wonderful guests, and I don't know that they were expecting this many quotes. But anyways, let's dig into this. Let's get some basic facts out, because I want to talk about things that we don't normally talk about when it comes to the ageless look, slowing, and the oath rod. So why don't we just get into what the Wheel of Time Companion has to say? I'll read this one. It's a little bit long, but then I'll invite you both to kind of read some as we go. So this one is from the Wheel of Time Companion. It says that Terangriel, when talking about the oath rod, used by the White Tower to bind and accepted to the 3 oaths on becoming Aes Sedai. A smooth white rod about as thick as a woman's wrist, or a little slimmer, and approximately 1 foot long. It looked like ivory, but felt smoother. Not quite like ivory, not quite like glass, and was very cool to the touch. Not cold, but distinctly cool. It was very hard, harder than a steel bar, though no heavier than the ivory it appeared to be, and was unmarked except for a flowing symbol incised in one end. This was a numeral, as used in the Age of Legends, and represented the number 3. Some thought the numeral stood for the 3 oaths. The rod was simply held in the hand while a little spirit was channeled into the numeral. Whatever was promised, even if not in the form of an oath, was binding on the person holding the rod until they were released. Morgan, do you remember when you knew or came to this idea that the oath rod was somehow related to the ageless look?
Oh gosh. I'm trying to remember. I remember, like Crown of Swords came out, and there started to be the whole kind of, the whole thing about the kin, and how, wait, there are all of these other channelers, and wait, what about the wise ones? And, you began to see that there are these channelers all over the place, and they don't look the same, and so... Yeah. But it was so long ago, I'm kind of like asking myself, had I really puzzled it out? And I definitely puzzled it out long before we were told about it, because I know that the conclusion is drawn in the stories probably about book like 9 or something.
Yeah, I think so, like 9 or
something like that.
I want to say I think one of the quotes we'll read is from an interview. And I think Jordan would not answer. People were asking, because people were starting to associate, like you said. Fans were starting to associate these things. And then Jordan would just give Raffos. And I think I saw one, it was like 2003 is when he finally would talk about it. So that was clearly for him when basically he thought that at least, I don't know, maybe it was before then, but at least 2003 was the moment. I can't remember. I think this is I think the Wattfack even had something about the oath rod when it was one of those theories when we talked about the ageless look. One of the things that stands out to me, Pevara, and I don't know if this just struck you, like the description of the oath rod is just like mind-bogglingly. It's like cold, but like not cold, but distinctly cool, which is like a very weird. And then it's like heavier than steel or harder than steel, but. I think was it heavier or just like
no,
heavier?
Harder than steel, but no heavier than ivory.
Yeah, like, do you think this is like just fun? Like he's just having fun with describing this, or do you think there's something relevant about that description to what this thing does and how it was constructed, or was it just kind of like, I don't know, is this just like a fun wordplay that he was having?
I think he definitely wanted to give it a feeling like this is a magical object that doesn't make. So its physical properties don't actually make any sense. But it also kind of reminds me of the descriptions of Quindiar.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's it. And I didn't think about that. Like he definitely gave it that kind of description that would allude to something magical, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Because it sounds like something about this isn't quite right, or it doesn't add up to what your senses are telling you, but also like the details or how very descriptive it is sounds like somebody who's like, got that kind of like scientist's mind where they want to be real specific about stuff. And
Right.
if he does have his system of weights and measurements, but he knows that only like the hardcorest of nerds are going to have that down, so he can't tell you it actually weighs this specific amount, or he can't give you those kinds of details because nobody's going to find that compelling. So
Right.
he tries to give you those descriptors, and goes a little overboard so you can really know what he's talking about.
I love that. Like, but doesn't try to give you the actual scientific version of it, because otherwise you would like, wait a second, that's not what steel weighs or something. I love this comment from Andrew. Said the description of the rod is common with RJ's notes he made for other matters that you have read in other deep dives, was the comment. Sorry, it's not showing the whole thing there. And I like Miss Sarah James' comment. I think he was avoiding saying plastic. It's just a plastic wand that was like made into a ter'angreal later on. Somebody found it in a dig sometime and they like converted it. I love it. Well, for those of you who are watching, yes, we'll break it to you. If you did not know it to this point, you've read the books and you were like, wait, what? The Oath Rod? Yes, the Oath Rod is directly responsible for agelessness, and let's talk about that. But what is the Oath Rod? Let's get the second quote up here. I'll read this one too. This one also comes from the Wheel of Time Companion. Said, binders, as they are called then, were used in the Age of Legends to bind people who were incorrigibly violent because of personality flaws or madness. If the person being bound could not channel, an Aes Sedai had to power it, but the effect was the same. The older one was when bound, the more it restricted. That is one reason it was used relatively seldom and only if nothing else would work. It was used instead of a death penalty too, though in a way, in terms of an age, it was a death penalty. To bind someone not only not to commit their crime again, but to spend the rest of their lives, if necessary, making restitution. Pevara, what do you... like, when we think of this, I mean, it takes very little, right? I think it was just like a little spirit, and basically you... whatever was promised. It doesn't have to be in the form of an oath. And this thing would bind it to you. And so in this case, for criminals, they would not only spend the rest of their lives bound by this thing, but sometimes they would actually make them spend the rest of their lives making restitution. Just talk to me really quickly about, like, how do you feel about this, like, ethically and morally, the concept of a binder like this?
Oh gosh, ethically and morally, I mean, I can only compare it to our own system of policing and punishment for crimes, which makes me feel like it's probably not a great system. The idea of someone having to spend the rest of their lives paying restitution for something, I don't know. I wonder how bad the crime would have to be in order to warrant such a penalty.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a case we made. There's some Forsaken that maybe they would have liked to have gotten bound, who did end up contributing to the breaking of the world, if you will. So, yeah, it's an interesting, this whole concept of these things. Sometimes when we talk about the Age of Legends and it's like, this was an amazing place, there's also some crazy tech that they had. And this is one of them to me. It's like, it doesn't have to, like, if this was in the wrong hands, someone could absolutely misuse this thing, right? Like, you think, oh yeah, this is like in some application of law, but take it out of that, or just give it to somebody without the right, direction, and it's easy to, you just immediately can think of like 1,000 terrible things that this thing could be done and used to. So it's not a shock that I think one of the quotes, it might be later, the Forsaken were just surprised when they came out. They were like, why are they all binding themselves like criminals, right? They were familiar, at least with this whole thing. But it wasn't even that. I don't know. We're going to read a quote here, and let's jump in. But we're going to tackle the question of, did the Forsaken know? So let me ask that. I'm going to end this poll. I asked at the start of the show, does the ageless look have an age? Interesting. Split poll here. 46% said yes, 54% said no. So we're going to tackle that. Like, what is the ageless look? So I want to ask this poll for you. Did the Forsaken know about the ageless look and the Oath Rod in the Age? or during the Second Age? Yes or no? Okay, so Morgan, do you mind reading this third quote? Let me throw this up here. This one is from Budapest Q&A that Robert Jordan did in April 2003. Go ahead.
Okay, so Robert Jordan says no to a question. Now, you have to be careful with this because this is a kind of spoiler for people who haven't read far enough, but the Oath Rod is what was in the Age of Legends called a binder. It was used on criminals. If you committed a violent act or some sort of criminal act, with a binder, someone who could channel could be constrained from ever doing that again, and the result of having 3 of the oaths is the ageless appearance. 1 would not produce agelessness, but even 1 would shorten life, and 3 of them put a cap on Aes Sedai's lives, on how long they would live. That's interesting.
Yep. Yeah, I thought that's why I
Okay.
wanted to include this. I know it doubled down on the binder aspect. Then when he added in the 1 would not produce agelessness, but even 1 would shorten life, and 3 of them put a cap on Aes Sedai's lives on how long they could live. And not just Aes Sedai. This one, and it might be a quote that comes up later, but on not just Aes Sedai lives, but on non-channelers' lives too, when it was used for criminals. It did affect their lifespans. But he kind of nailed down that 3 oaths were necessary for the ageless appearance. In his notes, Jordan is still playing with that idea. So there's a time in his notes where he's like, 1's not enough, but maybe 2. 2 might be enough. And like he's like thinking about it, maybe 2 oaths. But obviously he came down on the side of no, all 3 oaths are necessary to create that ageless look. So,
well, maybe it's like, if you only go get Botox like once, it's not super obvious, but like the more plastic surgery you get, the more it looks like, you had some work done. So yeah, I'm guessing it's just like a matter of, how many Botox injections have you gotten?
I like that. Well, I want to talk about that. We're going to get into that here shortly, and we're going to answer this question that was the first question we asked for the poll, which is, what is agelessness? What does it look like? And what does it do? Like, what are the oaths? How do they affect you? So I want to add this in to answer this question. And basically Robert Jordan was working with the DeBell brothers to do the graphic novels. And he was answering questions to them, like sending correspondence, letters back and forth. I'm pretty sure there's a letter, not an email. But answering questions because they're drawing these things, right? They're putting his characters in a graphic novel and kind of want to know how things appear. And so Robert Jordan would give them feedback like, this Trolloc, this dress, this person would never wear this dress. Give like really, really detailed feedback. Like the guy knew his characters. Like, it basically was like, this person would never dress like that. That's just not something that they would ever do. So you need to change that. And then sometimes he would say, this is not this right, but it's fine. So in this letter, he kind of gives us a clue of how he would tackle the idea of agelessness. But before we go there, to that last point, maybe I want to kind of backtrack to that and say, like, and I kind of like this idea, Morgan, that maybe there is something happening. It's just not visible yet. That a 3rd oath is compounded enough. So, because it is shortening your lifespan. So let's jump into this question. We'll continue here shortly. What is happening then to produce? Like, Pevara, do you have like a theory of like what's actually happening, like from a physical standpoint, from the physiology of the body? Like, what's happening to them each time they take another oath?
I have always imagined it, because of the description of the tightening of the skin, as almost like a mask being put on that literally just holds their face in place and makes it so that it's difficult to move. It sounds a lot like facelifts too, and how those work.
Yeah, like it's physically like, and is it because it sounds like it's full body, as in when they talk about the pressure of it, but like you're saying, the most obvious part that everyone sees is the face where this happens. Do you think it's actually physically changing them? Like, do you think it's a literal physical change to the cells in their body, or is it a metaphysical change, or both?
I have to come down on the side of both, just because we know that magic's involved. But yeah, absolutely. I think on a cellular level, uh, it would have to be a change of that sort in order to be consistent throughout their lives.
Yeah, it's wild to think that something might be going there. Morgan, where do you? We'll jump into these quotes that talk about age and the look. Where are you at right now on this? Which is it? Is it both? Do you think there's a physical change that's happening, or is it just a metaphysical one that's kind of just basically over top of what people are seeing?
Yeah, I think that Jordan liked to think things through as realistically as possible. So, he wasn't a biologist, but he would have had to have been trying to at least think about what kind of biological processes would have been being affected. And so, yeah, I would figure that it would have had to have caused some kind of structural alteration of cells. I'm guessing some kind of and I'm not a biology nerd, so I don't know, but I'm guessing it actually causes physical harm, some kind of calcification of cell walls or whatever, like your membranes aren't quite as, squishy as they used to be or whatever. I don't know. I'm not I'm an English nerd, but just like that your cell structures are not as elastic as they used to be. And so therefore, while you are, healthy, because it seems like, especially if you can channel, you are not prone to a lot of the kinds of, aches and pains of age, which it must be nice to be able to live for a long time and never have back pain or something. I'm kind of jealous about that, but it's got to cause some kind of damage, if it's going to shorten your life, if it's going to, something's not right about that. That is not which is probably why it was something that was only done as absolute last resort. Because it's just it's not a good thing to do.
Oh, I'm trying to imagine whoever discovered this was possible. Was it a scientist that was like, wait, we could do this, and we could, or was it somebody, was it a channeler that, the process of making this Terrangrail just really fascinates. It's like an Agenor. Did it come out of Agenor's, or a laboratory like Agenor, looking at ways to, affect people at a very cellular is because you think about some of these things like Agenor recognizing the evil that is that is more death, and this idea that what kind of stuff were they messing with that they could do this kind of thing?
Sorry, Kitty. I'm almost wondering if it affects electrical impulses or whatever, because if it can prevent you from actually engaging in activities where you're oh, I swear I won't do that anymore, then I'm wondering if it affects somehow the way certain things fire in your body or whatever.
Interesting. Yeah. Would that be in your head? Is that is it, where is that? Or is it all along your body, right? Is it you give a command? I'm trying to think, they can think about doing it, they just can't, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't stop the thought. If they try to, does anyone remember, do we have Aes Sedai that try to do something and then the body just doesn't react to what they're trying? So yeah, maybe this is is it all the cells of your body, right? And somehow it's magic, tied into some, where does this oath sit? You know what I'm saying? Is this, it's such an, anyways, it's a fascinating thing about that. I'm kind of curious what everyone's thinking out there. Kyle Swain said, what a really fascinating discussion. Scientifically, we know age is determined by telomere length, so that physicality must be affected. Yeah, because it's affecting age, but the oaths themselves are also preventing movement in some cases. You could probably have an oath that would prevent a thought potentially. Wild.
Maybe.
Yeah, go ahead, Pevara.
I'm curious if the agelessness and the shortened lifespan aren't separate consequences of the oath rod, but the agelessness that happens results in the shorter lifespan itself because it damages your cells, like Morgan was saying.
Yeah, right. It could be. Yeah, to create the look, because I was thinking of the criminal aspect of this, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe, but it doesn't happen with the first one. So it feels almost like one of these things that like is a side effect that people were not aware of because they weren't thinking we would bind people 4, 5, 6 times. But maybe in a testing, it's like I'm just trying to think like the QA group on this Terangreal was like, hey, you want to see what happened to to Joe or something that we had testing this thing? Like this actually has like anti-aging properties, like maybe they thought that was a good thing. Like, this is crazy,
Maybe they used to swear all their oaths in one go, and then when they realized it had anti-aging properties, they were like, oh, hey, what if we do it like one oath at a time, and then we'll be even more ageless? And they thought that was a great idea because they didn't actually realize that what it was doing was, cutting their lifespans down. So they thought it was a good consequence, and they didn't realize that actually it wasn't.
Yeah, it is. Well, we're gonna read some more quotes here. It's crazy. Riss said, "Would taking the oaths with the one power tie you to the pattern in a tighter way, like narrow your possibilities?" That is so wild because that's true, right? It's basically preventing the wheel. Like, you think of the wheel in my head, I think of the wheel as like the overarching director of this, but this thing shortens the life, and could the wheel still give you a longer life? I don't know. This is a question for Jordan, probably. Like, could you, because Jordan talks about it being a strict, like there is a limit and there's no longer. So that is a really cool concept, that it does affect the wheel's capability of using these souls for its purposes. As soon as they now it would have already played out the scenario, like it would have already done the scenario side of this, so it knows about the oath rod and what it does. But anyways, sorry, we're getting like into the weeds here. Let me jump back out, and I want to read this quote. This one is to LANSDELL from Robert Jordan. So here we go. Dear Les, there was a part about Trollocs I took out there. As for the ageless look, I have always imagined it as being a difficulty in setting an age to the woman. You glance at her the first time and think she's 40, but the next instant you think she can't be more than 20, and you just can't settle on where she belongs in age bracket. If you try the idea about combining the two faces, I suggest using 20 and 40, not 50, but do you then end up with a face that simply looks 30? I wish I could give you more of guidance or a good suggestion. It's a lot easier when I only have to envision the image in my head. Take care, Les. All my best, Jim. So Pevara, what do you think about that? Like, even Robert Jordan is having a really hard time here, like explaining the concept of what he came up with agelessness, because even he realized you can't just say, oh, it's between 20 and 40, because that means it's 30, so it does have an age. So he's struggling here. Like, what do you think about this? Like, when you think of agelessness, is that how you think about it? Like, you just see somebody and you peg them with an age, or just your brain doesn't know what to do, so it just kind of assigns, like, I don't know, 20, I don't know, 40, I don't know. Is it I don't know, or do you think you do see an age of sorts but different?
I think it varies. Like, the way that I've always pictured it is that it varies depending on what view you're getting of that person. Are you looking at their whole face? Are you looking at their eyes? Are you taking in their demeanor? That could affect how you view somebody's age. I don't think there's a specific number. Jordan doesn't seem to think there's really a specific number, just somewhere in this range. Yeah, I think I remember a quote from the books, and I don't remember exactly where. There was one that said that if you just looked at an Aes Sedai briefly, you would think she was maybe 25, but then when you saw her eyes, you thought she had to be older.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because I think this is one of those things that fans have always agreed to disagree about, because I think a lot of people think ageless means young, like, but is it young 20? Is it young 30? Is it young 40? Is it young 50? He says not 50, which, by the way, is a really funny comment for him, because later on he talks about, like, the look of someone is between 25, with like 20 and 60. So at some point, 50 is going to be the kind of look as that person ages over time. But yeah, ageless. Morgan, for you, ageless, is it a metaphysical thing that's pushing against you as the viewer of them? Like, are you experiencing something metaphysical when you see an Aes Sedai? Or are you just seeing the physical outcome of what's been done to them that is creating this conundrum for your mind?
I've always just kind of pictured it as, I don't want to say like I actually imagine it. It looks like they had plastic surgery or something, because like it doesn't in my head make me think of, that they look fake exactly, but it's just sort of like there are a lot of people who are, older, who are middle-aged or whatever, but who look really young, where people are surprised to find out how old they are. And if you look closely, you're like, oh, okay, you can see it, in the corner of their eyes, or they're a little gray, or in their neck or whatever, where once you find out how old they are, you double check and you like look for the signs. So like maybe they're like that, except they don't have the neck wrinkles, or they don't have anything in the corner of their eyes, or the gray hair or whatever. So it's sort of like you get that kind of ambiguousness of their age, except without any of the actual physical signs of aging that somebody gets after a while, so where,
Yeah,
it catches up with you in the end.
It's one of those like makes me wonder, because we talk about the whole concept of what they're going through when they take the oaths. There is kind of this pressure, right? There is this tightening, right? And
it's just all like,
is it like literally their face?
Like your face.
And like you said, like maybe they've taken it and it's just like changed their cells in such a way, and the damage of those cells or something is just over time. It's just like a quick thing, because we'll talk about how this affects people that are not channelers and as they're older. I'm going to answer this this poll. Did the Forsaken know about the ageless look and the oath rod during the second age? 71% of you said yes. 29% said no. We will actually give you an answer to that question tonight. And now let me ask this one. We've just had this conversation. Kind of curious what everyone's thinking out there. How did I say this before? Is agelessness a physical or metaphysical? Physical or both effect. Okay. We'll call it physical. Sorry, I'm like metaphysical and both. Okay, I'm kind of curious on this one, what everyone's gonna be saying out there, because Innkeeper on us makes a good point. It says, but it takes a few years to get the ageless look. So even though there is pressure and tightening when the oaths take effect, right? So it still takes time. So that's a good point, right? It's not an immediate effect, and so you'd think if the tightening and the pressure were directly related to immediate damage of some sort, so maybe or immediate aging of those cells, that you'd see an effect much earlier than sometimes years down the road. So
I think if it were severe enough, like on your cells, to cause you to be instantly ageless, it would probably be deadly at that point, I would think.
And that's true. And it might just be the fact that it is the channeling that's the channeling plus the oath rods, plus the age, right? We're going to find out here shortly that has something to do with it. Actually can shorten that time where somebody basically dies. So an absence of channeling, old age, and 3 oaths could take someone out really quickly. So that effect of agelessness or whatever is being done to their cells it could be a faster one. So there's a lot to try to parse here. Now, I want to bring up this second quote. Pevara, I don't know if you can read this one. I know it's a little bit smaller on the screen, but this one is aging in the Aes Sedai. This is from Robert Jordan's notes. I put box 57 or 61. I'm not totally sure. Since the notes I have show a different box, they changed the boxes they had these notes in. So, but if you just look up, basically, this comes from a file on Aes Sedai. I think if you look up like notes on Aes Sedai undated is where you would find these. And this is on page 10, at least, of the file I have. So, and Pevara, are you able to read that one?
Yes. Aging in Aes Sedai. Remember that not everyone knows an Aes Sedai on site. Everyone knows they are ageless, or at least many people do. Others have other and sometimes quite strange ideas about the appearance of an Aes Sedai. Though just about everybody does agree that there is some distinctive Aes Sedai look. but agelessness really means that it is simply impossible to put an age to her, and there is considerable variance among people who have never knowingly seen an Aes Sedai as to what that means.
So yeah, this is from his notes, and I just wanted to remind everybody this quote might have made it into the Wheel of Time Companion. Sometimes Jordan was really sure about something he wrote there, and then later on he gave a different answer in an interview, or sometimes the notes do not reflect the exact final canon fact, if you want to say it that way. But here he says, but agelessness really means that it is simply impossible to put an age to her, and there is considerable variance among people who've never knowingly seen an Aes Sedai as to what that means. So in this instance, Jordan's saying, it really isn't. It's that you can't put an age, right? And like you're saying, you both said this. Well, he didn't tell us why that is, right? He didn't tell us if that was a metaphysical thing. He didn't tell us if that's just because it changes different things, right? It's you don't see any of this, but like you're saying, Morgan, maybe obviously hair color changes, right? So you do get hair color changes eventually. So you do get natural aging things that happen, but it takes a long, long time for those things to actually occur. So I wanted to bring that one in because he puts it that way. I know a lot of fans will say, no, agelessness just means 25. You know what I mean? That's what it means. In their heads, it just
29.
Yeah. Oh, yes. 29 is the. It's like to them, ageless means they just are, because some of the Aes Sedai that we meet, if I'm not mistaken, is Moraine Moraine's actual age? Isn't it like
42?
It's 42. Okay, I was gonna say like 45. So 42. So when you meet Moraine, she has that kind of like, she actually does look young, if you will, but ageless. So I think that changes that kind of, I can't put an age to that person. In his mind, it changes a bit, but it's still ageless. So anyways, yeah, I love Goat Brother. But 29 is an age. That's right.
It is an age. Well, I also just think that like people's demeanor changes as they get older. They tend to slow down, get more self-assured, just have, a more ponderous nature or whatever, or they chill out or whatever. But it's just sort of like people seem older just because of how they carry themselves. So it might almost be like they look young or they look 29ish or whatever, but not just like he talks about how their eyes seem too old for youth, but I'm guessing just their manner and their gravity is older.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm reading a Light Blinded Fool's comment here. Said, I think still having the ability to channel causes a slower transition away from the ageless face, whereas stilling is abrupt and you don't have the power connection to slow the effects. Yeah, I think that's probably pretty accurate. Without, we don't have a factual declaration about that. In other words, we don't have an instance where we have a non-channeler that's taken 3 oaths of a particular age where we're able to track that. But Jordan does hint at something like that. I don't know that it's immediate, but you're right. We do notice that stilling and gentling, or sorry, I guess in this case, stilling would actually create that, like it goes away rather quickly. I can't remember if it's instant. Was it instant with Swan?
Pretty much, yeah.
Basically instant, right? Because I think they see her and they're like, Swan looks different.
Yeah, by the next day anyway.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So let me throw this one up here. This one is actually a question that Brandon Sanderson answered. This is in 2011 at an Alloy of Law signing when he was still getting, he'd go sign his own books and then he'd get questions about the Wheel of Time. And this one's paraphrased, so you got to take it for what it's worth. That is to say, paraphrase could be a part of this interview was paraphrased, but this answer is exactly like this. But this was quoted as paraphrased in our interview database, so I'm going to leave it like that. And yeah, Morgan, do you mind reading this one?
Oh, for sure.
Here. Go ahead.
Okay, the question is, does the Oath Rod limit Aes Sedai age by using their life source to power the oaths? And Brandon says, I'm 85% sure on this, and you'll have to ask Maria for confirmation, but no, the effect is not caused by draining the Aes Sedai's life force. I'm not going to tell you what is causing the effect. Well, that's rude.
That's actually, he's like,
he's not going to tell you.
Going to give
I think because you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it's not because, maybe it's because he didn't know. So this is, I'm going to add this. We're going to dive into some of these quotes from the Wheel of Time Companion now, and People are like, "Are you not going to get through 16 quotes today, everybody? You're like on quote like 6. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. So I'll jump into this one, and then we'll keep on talking about this one. This one's from the Wheel of Time Companion, back on page 544. That's right, 543, 544. These are really helpful today. This one says there was a perception of pressure with each oath taken. This pressure was uncomfortable at first, as though one was wearing a garment that covered from the top of one's head to the soles of one's feet and was too small, or as if one's skin was too tight. This pressure faded over a period of months, usually taking about a year to vanish entirely, but while it existed, it seemed quite real, and in a way was quite real. That's just an interesting way by the way, I'm going to stop right there. It seemed quite real, and in a way was quite real. That is, an injury or bruise taken while the pressure existed would hurt more, just as if there really was pressure on it. It was the cumulative effect of 3 oaths taken that produced the strong feeling of one's skin being too tight. One oath by itself would produce some of the same effect, but not quite as intense and not lasting so long. If oaths were removed and then retaken, the physical effect was the same as for taking them for the first time. Swearing again to an oath already taken and not removed produced only a momentary feel of pressure which faded immediately. Like, that's wild. Like, what is, like, that's just like, so you know if you've already taken the oath, and so you try to take it again, and it's like, nah, we already got this. Like for a moment, it's like you get a pressure, and it's like, no, this oath already exists. It's like, what is there, like some digital, like, I'm trying to imagine like where these oaths are sitting and how it, whatever is tracking the oaths know that a previous oath has already been sworn enough to not have an effect that's clearly, I would say this quote says it's clearly metaphysical and physical. Do you read it that way, Pevara?
I do, yeah. Especially the part where it says that bruises would hurt more. That seems like a very physical effect, almost as if it's making your nerves more sensitive.
Yeah, it's. And it was like, and it was quite real, but it seemed like it was quite real. You probably all had some, well, not everyone, but some surgery. And at first, like after surgery, you're like, this feeling's never going away. This is so painful. Mm-hmm. And after a month, I had a carpal tunnel surgery on my wrists, and both wrists at the same time. And I was like, it got to a certain point where I'm like, I could just still feel it. I could feel it. And then like sometime between 6 and 7, 8 months, I just woke up one day and didn't even think about it, and it was like gone. And so it does feel like it's one of those things where there's been something terrible. Like if you think of something that's damaged the body enough, or it's affected the body enough, that the body's worked through whatever that thing is over the course of a year. That's what it almost sounds like to me. Like it's something that so impactful that it's taking up to a year to basically, quote unquote, heal from it, if you will. I don't know, Morgan, how do you take that quote, and what are your thoughts after that?
It sounds like they're climbing into a metaphysical onesie that's way too tight.
It's a metaphysical onesie.
Yeah, it takes them about a year to break it in. It's like, but yeah, I don't know. It sounds like that whatever is happening to them physically is something where they have to kind of break it in, so that once again I'm imagining something physiological where there's just like a stiffening or tightening of the cells, and they can break it down to a certain extent, but that their body is never quite right. But then it seems like once you are broken away from the oath rod, then you're okay again, because sisters who are stilled or whatever, they're fine after the fact. So
that's a great point, right? So if it's a physical thing and it immediately goes away, like, could it really be at a cellular level? But how does it get reversed? Like you no longer have access to the one power, but a non-channeler doesn't have access to the one power, but they can't be stilled. So there's something there. I'm like, well, non-channeler can't be stilled, so they couldn't have this. But to be stilled, it goes away immediately. But it does seem like it has a physical effects. I don't know. This feels like some wild thing that Robert Jordan came up with. That probably it can't be explained. I just love trying to like come up with explanations for it, though. That's the Innkeeper Anna said it's kind of like antibody responses immunity. I love that. Oh. Yeah. That's a good way to think about it. And this is a good question. Noman Garden said, why does stilling break the oaths when the first quote said that non-channelers could be bound? Yeah, like, do you have a theory on that, Pevara? Like, why would
I
stilling actually break these? And it almost seems like a get out of. It's not get out of free. It's not get out free because you're stilled, but it is a way to get out of the oaths. In a way,
I,
if you think about it.
I think it's because of the way that they take the oaths. When
Mm.
Unaccepted takes the oaths, they actually are the ones channeling into the oath rod. Whereas with a non-channeler, obviously somebody else would be channeling into it. So I think that's why stilling would work, because it's snapping their connection to the oath rod. Whereas with a
So-
non-channeler, it wouldn't have the same effect.
Okay, so Morgan, if the person that is the channeler that channels into the oath rod to give you a non-channeler an oath, and they're stilled, does your oath go away? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, is there somehow connected to the channeling and the channeler who channeled into the rod, or is it who's holding it and giving the oath? That's where the tie-in is probably happening. Obviously, like that person's. Anyways, I'm trying to like connect the two, right? So maybe there's not an answer.
Yeah, and what if that person gave a whole bunch of people a different oaths and then they died? Does that really? Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, like maybe it's
Interesting.
irrelevant. Yeah, Morgan, what are you thinking?
I don't think so. I think that in that case, it's just sort of like because it's in someone else's, physically affecting another person. So whether or not the person who did the channeling is no longer connected to the one power because there's no physical, channeling connection between the two, it wouldn't have an effect. Whereas if you're channeling into the rod and then taking the oaths and it binds it and then it does some massive reversal. I mean, I feel like that was just for plot purposes. I don't know if he really thought through what the science of it was at that point, but I also feel like one of the things that makes the world realistic is there's not an answer for everything.
Yeah. No, that's true. I like Remo Mills said, if you attempted to still a bound non-channeler, would that break the oaths? Like I just have 9 Eves in there. Like I don't see anything to still here, but I'm just gonna do it anyway. And is it basically it would almost suggest that wherever the binding happens is probably in a similar place in a channeler or non-channeler. It's just that the non-channeler doesn't have a connection at a soul level to the one power itself. But I would imagine at the physical level maybe is where it's happening, and wherever physically someone is bound, maybe it's in a similar spot, and that's why if you're stilled, then it breaks. Anyways, it's a fun question. This is something Jordan would just love to know that we were all like talking about.
I'm surprised that you could bind a non-channeler, honestly, because of the way stuff works, and I'm wondering if there's like an extra step to it or something.
Yeah.
It seems like you would have to do something extra.
Okay, I told everyone they could call in, so I feel bad. We're already I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe we're not going to get through all this stuff. Okay, this is a live call and talk show. If you want to give us a call and give us a kind of wild answer to any of these kind of randomly ridiculous questions we're asking, you can give us a call at 1313-TALK-WATT or 1313-825-5968. I'll leave that up for a bit. I'll try to weave you into this conversation about channeling. Okay, let's get through a couple more of these. Pevara, I don't know if you can read this one up on the screen here. I'll throw it up. Here you go. This one also from the Wheel of Time Companion.
The Ageless look did not come on immediately. Its progression was only very roughly in proportion to strengthen the power, with considerable variation among people of the same strength. For someone who was very strong, it would take at least a year, and as much as 3 or 4 was not at all uncommon. The average Aes Sedai took 5 or some years, while the weakest to reach the shawl could take as long as 10 or more.
So yeah, so there. I mean, non-channelers can be bound, but channelers, they have the ageless look, because there is clearly something. It's really weird because this is almost like directly opposite. I'm trying to think about this. So it's saying that stronger people have an ageless look quicker, but they live longer. That's almost different than I would have imagined.
It does seem counterintuitive, especially because it's not necessarily always the case that stronger people reach the shawl faster. but often it is the case. So if you're weaker, it usually takes you longer to reach the shawl, which means by the time you reach the shawl, you have slowed considerably compared to others who might be stronger. And you would think
Yeah.
if you had slowed more before you swore the 3 O's, you would reach the ageless look faster if you had already slowed more.
Yes. I wonder if it's the quantity of one power. You know that like how
Maybe.
Rand almost seems to supercharge. You know, that seems like what Shamael is doing is trying to get him to channel, almost supercharge his madness, if you will, like supercharge his problems by getting him to channel and channel more and more of the one power. I wonder if that's the relation here, where stronger channelers are likely going to channel more than others. They're going to take on more of the one power, and something about that is somehow activating maybe this effect in a faster way than someone who doesn't channel as much and can't. Like, it makes me wonder, like, could you, sorry, this is like so random, but could a weaker channeler have a sangreal and use it really often, and would they get the ageless look faster? These are tests we need to do, people. I want to answer that question. You know what I mean? Like, that would tell you, that would be the test they would have to do, or they could do, to try to potentially connect the actual, you know, idea of more one power activates this effect in some way. Anyways, maybe it's an absurd question, but that's what we're here to do. Let me look at this last poll question up here, everyone. I left this one up. 100 of you basically voted. Is agelessness a physical or metaphysical or both effect? 30% said physical, 15% said metaphysical, and 55% of you said both. Nice. That is, I definitely feel like we've had proof here that it's a both, although it's still kind of wild that stilling basically erases it. So I'm going to ask everybody this. This is do you think, I don't think we have, now, Morgan, Pevara, you can tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think we have proof that if someone's stilled, they get all of their life back. I think we have reason to believe their lifespan will lengthen as compared to what the shortened lifespan. But I don't know that, Jordan, we have any reason to know that they will get everything back that they lost. Does that make sense? So if let's say you had the oaths for 100 years, and you're only supposed to live like 300 at the max, basically, with the oaths. But then you're stilled. No, if you're stilled, then you technically, the slowing goes away after stilling too. Yeah. So let's say you removed the oaths. Let's just go for, you can still channel, but you removed the oaths. So if you remove the oaths, do you think that you get back that length of life that you lost out to the oaths?
Possibly. I don't know. I guess I would assume that it wouldn't cause irrevocable damage, because if there were some kind of issue, it could be healed. I'm wondering, at least as far as stilling, if you had lived past a time where you would die if you lived a normal lifespan, if you would be killed. But I guess that doesn't happen because Mistress Ainen was, I think, quite old for a non-channeler when she was burnt out, and she didn't die. She was like living, she basically was like zapped back to young age. I don't know. Yeah,
am I forgetting that? I don't think I'm forgetting that wrong. If you're stilled, you don't still have the benefit of slowing any longer.
No, it's just sort of like you get reset to being 20 or something.
And then you're living, then I think you're normal aging, I thought at that point. Am I misremembering that? And I'm doubting my one, because I know burning out obviously has a different physical and metaphysical effect to you. I can't remember if stilling you completely lose slowing or not. So I'll watch for comments here. So yeah, I'm seeing some people aren't really totally sure yet, but no is getting 62% of this question that I asked. Pevara, what do you think? If a channeler removes their oaths, do they get back the lifespan they lost to swearing the oaths?
I don't think so. I feel like that's probably a permanent change that we need to, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me that they would get their lifespan back once it's already been shortened.
Okay. Yeah, John. I mean, John's pointing out Swan clearly de-ages in the book for sure, and I'm pretty sure that's why that's one of the ones that just kind of keys in. But slowing, it's this idea of, do you go back to, if taking the oaths away, do you go back to the slowing where it started, or you just go back to the look of where the slowing would have had you in the event that you were living? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's like, where do you go back to? Because obviously you do go back to that kind of slowed look. Okay, so let me read this one. This also comes from Wheel-Time Companion. This talks about, getting free of the oaths. So I'll read this one. It says, it was possible to be broken free of the oaths with the use of the oath rod. This was a very painful process which had various side effects, most, if not all, temporary, but all unpleasant in one way or another. They included temporary physical weakness and loss of will, a temporary inability to channel, and considerable pain. Being released from one oath was very painful. Being released from all three at one time was agonizing. So, Morgan... I mean, it sounds like it's terrible. At the same time, you're going to get life back. So that's a good thing, right? Like, it sounds horrendous. It sounds painful. Again, there's that kind of physical side of this.
Mm-hmm.
There is a physical cost for removing oaths. So it seems like there must be a physical effect of these oaths themselves. What do you think's happening here? You remove the oaths. Again, is it like taking off your metaphysical onesie? And it's just painful because it's so tight. It's just like a really tight onesie, and you just can't get it off your
like
leg or something.
It off. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it sounds like it's probably causing some type of issue on a cellular level or something. Like, especially if it's like internal, like your innards are sensy, and yeah, having anything internally like getting messed up like that would probably. Like, yeah, that doesn't sound fun. So it's sort of like, especially if it's changing anything about you as far as like on a cellular level, I'm guessing that if you unswear your oaths and it's kind of an immediate, I take it back, it's, yeah, very jarring, and it just kind of like, rips, like ripping off a Band-Aid or whatever. And then if you re-swear it, then it's like, trying to put that back. It just seems like, not so great. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure like what is involved with it, but just that it doesn't surprise me that it's painful. If it's gonna make you die sooner and do weird stuff to your face, then I'm guessing it's also probably not so great to.
Yeah, well, and I'm thinking it's like when you go in Pevara, like I'm trying to think, like you go in for a facial, but it's not a de-aging facial; it's like an aging facial. And then like after that, then you go back and you're like, actually take all that off. I don't want the aging; I want to de-age that back. So it almost feels like, yeah, you've taken it's like taking away your lifespan, but giving that back is just as painful. I don't know. That's okay. Here's the last one quote we're going to hear, Morgan, and this one's the last one about the oath rod. I'm seeing lots of. By the way, Andrew Berenson said the last quote contradicted the book. Pevara and Serene removed the oath of lying. What does it mean? Removed. It is possibly broken free of the oath with the use of the oath rod. This was a very painful process. You have to maybe explain that to me, Andrew. Okay, so yeah, Morgan, if you don't mind reading this quote. It's the last one from the Wheel of Time Companion.
Without the oath rod, a channeler's age was somewhat in proportion to strength, though it wasn't in an exact proportion. Stronger channelers live longer, up to more than 800 years for a Forsaken class channeler. Aging occurred at a rate that would take channelers from the age at which one slowed to the apparent age of 60 or so. This relatively young maximum apparent age was an artifact of the healthful effects of the one power. With the oath rod, Aes Sedai lifespans were capped at about 300 years maximum.
Yeah, so aging occurred at a rate that would take channelers from the age at which one slowed to the apparent age of 60 or so. So if you do the math on that, like anyone want to do the math on the really Forsaken class channelers here, let's say they start slowing. Jordan, I think, said it was around 18 and 20 for women. So 20 to 800, right? So that's just about 800 years, and you divide that by 40. Basically, you can get what your rate of aging is, if it would be for a strong channeler who never took oaths. So, anyway, this is such an interesting aspect of all the math and how this is all like interwoven, I guess, with actual aging and not aging and slowing versus agelessness. It was always like a source of confusion trying to talk about this on the internet. It was like, because you can think of agelessness as slowing, right? You can, because it's kind of creating a similar effect in some ways, right? It's not being able to put an age to somebody can be, right, construed as like they're younger than it seems like they should be, right? So, and that's an effect that people always talk about. This is Jordan Cardone said there are cellular diseases that halt cell production. So what if the oath rod puts a strain on the mitosis?
So that's what I needed, was somebody who's like a biology nerd to explain that shit. So.
Yes, right. Okay, we do have a caller. Let's bring our first caller. Oh, we had a caller. Hey, caller out there. We were about to bring you in, and they were like, they're never going to get to me here. So call back if you would like to jump on in. Sorry, we just found a good spot to weave you into the conversation and missed you. So sorry about that. Okay, this one is an interesting. We're going to talk about slowing now, everyone. And slowing is obviously different than slowing is actually just a natural occurrence from channeling, which is basically what Robert Jordan says here, but I'll show you the quote. This is from DragonCon, September 2005. I was there. Slowing is a function of actual channeling. If you have the ability to learn and you never learn to channel, you are not going to slow. You will age at a normal fashion. So think about that. Isn't that like kind of wild? Imagine you're out there, Pevara, and you could learn how to channel. You just didn't realize it. So let's say you were going to live till 80. But like when you're 70, someone teaches you how to channel, and all of a sudden you can live another 600 years. That's just like a wild, you just happen to be like an extremely strong channeler, and now you can live another 600 years. So it's almost, right, like, Pevara, do you see like the one power is kind of like agelessness a bit, right? Like one power has de-aging kind of capabilities in the, like, you're only aging 1 year for every like 20 30 years that you live. So maybe that's where they came up with this idea of the oath rod. It's like, how do I combat what the one power does? You know, how do I change that? Did you know that, Pevara? Did you know that like that the people that could learn to channel, they would start to slow only once they started channeling, no matter when they learned it, if they was like 70, 80, 90 years old?
Yeah, I did know that. We have an example of that in the books, actually.
So who's the example of that one?
Sharina Malloy. Mm-hmm. She's in her 80s, I think, and she's one of the people who gets picked up by Egwene. I don't know how spoiler you want me to get, but
oh yeah, no, you can. The show contains spoilers. If people stuck around, yeah, then you're gonna get spoiled.
Yeah, so she gets picked up by Egwene when she starts expanding the admissions criteria for the White Tower, and so we do see that she is going to start slowing, and I think we have some quotes about Sharina.
Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah, let me since we talked about Sharina, let's do this one. Can you read this one? This is from Robert Jordan's blog. This is actually this is 2006, guys. This is one of the last things that he did right. 2006, Robert Jordan's blog. This is a verbatim quote, and he brings up Sharina. So let me put that up on the screen, and you can go ahead and read that one, Pevara.
Regarding Sharina and other women who learn to channel at age, she will indeed grow younger in appearance. No, she will not achieve an Aes Sedai face without the oath rod, but where she has previously looked, say, 60, she will look perhaps 35, with accompanying changes in hair color. Think of it as analogous to slowing, which older women also do.
Yeah, so this is kind of wild. I can't remember where I read it, and it could have been in the Wheel of Time Companion, or it could have been in the notes talking about this. When this happens to someone that's, let's say, 20 or 25, it actually does take them backwards it takes them to look younger than they were even at that age. So they'll look like 14, basic. 50, that's what it's saying, is like it actually kind of like immediately has an impact, or not immediately, but as the slowing takes place, it has this appearance that you actually look much younger than when that slowing began, when it even happens. Now the difference is not as big, right? This difference is significant, right? Say 60 to 35 is that's a nice bump. Wouldn't we all like that? I'd take that one. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
you're at 60. Not only do you get to look 35, then you're aging at that 1 year. Well, depending on the strength of channeling, you're aging on that 1 year to every 20 years. So you are gaining like a significant amount of life, which is, I think, is crazy. Someone said, John Mayer said, yeah, another example is Dahmer Flynn.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so Village Mattress, I love this. The one power is the fountain of youth. Yeah, it's true, right? Like for channelers, it's somewhat, right? It can't combat everything, not every disease or anything like that, but it certainly is a fountain of youth, in which it makes sense, right? The one power powers the wheel, right? It gives life, if you will, to the wheel itself. So the idea that the one power powering people, that it has a tangential benefit of giving them life, I don't know, that makes sense. At least makes sense to the rules that he set up. Yeah, go ahead.
I actually found another quote from earlier on where it seems like he was developing this idea about Shrina, and it's from November 11th, 2000 in Australia.
Oh, cool.
Says, asking about Shrina, will she begin to physically look younger when she slows, or will she remain the same and pick up from there? And so she remains the same. It's not the same as having been stilled or burnt out. She's going to have a very long life still, just not as a youthful person. So it seems very much like he changed his mind about that and decided to de-age her.
Yeah.
I saw something else about how the younger you are when that happens, like if you're 35 or 40 when you start to channel, you're only going to get a couple of years. So it's a bigger difference because she's older.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The slowing effect is not as significant as in taking you back than if you were, like if you're 80, you might go back 30 to 40 years potentially. I think at some point this one he said 35. I think he wrote in his notes like 25, 30, no more or something like that. So he obviously would be playing with actual rates. Let's talk about that a little bit. He does say this in a signing report back. This is a paraphrased answer, but does the rate of slowing depend on your strength and the power? Yes, basically you age at 1x your normal rate, with x being dependent up to a point on power strength. The power acts as a natural rejuvenator on you. Even at and I clearly did not get the full quote there. Oh no, I missed the full quote. So even at what does it mean? Now it's like, well, I'm going to go, now I'm annoyed. Now I want to know, like, what was the end of that quote? So I'm gonna find the end of that quote. Even at there it is. Even at the point of death, you won't look or feel worse than a normal 65-year-old. So even at the point of death, that's what this says. Even at the point of death, you won't look or feel worse than a normal 65-year-old.
So it doesn't prevent back pain.
I mean, it's going to take you a while to get there, is all I'm saying. It's going to take you a while. So that's hilarious that I missed that quote. But then, thankfully, I had it right here. So, I like this. Zolden said it's cellular armor. Somewhat, yeah. I think that's... And so it does make sense in that when it comes to what is the oath rod doing, it's doing something at a cellular level. I would think, because of what you feel. I still think, I mean, I love my little theory on it, that it's causing a metaphysical effect around you, basically, that others are aware of, and they're translating it to agelessness. That the metaphysics of it is purposely, as in they made it for criminals. So it's almost purposely meant to call out, like, that person is someone you do not want to be around. As in, like, that person's the most dangerous because we had to give them 3 oaths. They are the most dangerous of all criminals we could have, and we're gonna show you, look, that's the most dangerous criminal. You can't be around that person, which I think is what the Forsaken find so funny when they get in this age. They're like, that is really weird. Okay, so I promised you we're going to read some of Robert Jordan's notes. I just want to remind you, and did I see someone else called us here? Hold on a second. Yes, we do have. I think I see that the caller that was on the line is back, and we have somebody else too. So let's bring our callers in. We'll talk to these 2 individuals, and then I want to go through a couple of these Robert Jordan notes quotes that I think they're a lot of fun. So here we go. Welcome to the Dusty Wheel. Who's this?
It's Innkeeper Anas.
Innkeeper Anas, how you doing?
I am doing well.
So you and I actually talked about this show, and we had
Yeah.
already talked like for 50 minutes about this. Have you enjoyed this dive in? Are we covering some territory that you and I hadn't even touched on?
Oh yes. I think your guests are bringing in some really awesome theories and thoughts. The one thing I wanted to just mention that I was thinking of, I'm not sure if you talked about this, but the fact that when someone gets stilled, how does that affect the getting your age back? And my thought was, let's say you had the oaths for 40 years, and for those 40 years your age was compressed to a certain degree. So for forever, whatever you lost during those 40 years, you're not going to gain that back. And that's where, even though you do gain back most of or some degree of the total age, it's not the same as what it would have been if you had never had the oath.
Well,
so the longer you had the oath, yeah.
But Swan, so what age was Morgan? You knew Moraine's age. Was Swan just right about the same age, right?
Yeah, they're about the same age.
Swan, after Swan
I
gets
guess,
still doesn't look, still looks really, I thought much younger than, or looks younger than the age that we believe she is. So she clearly had gained the benefit of slowing, and then ageless hit, and so the agelessness side goes away, but you still has the benefit of what the slowing had done for her, I guess. Is that kind of how you think about it?
Yeah, so I think, what I was saying is, so Swan had the oaths for like 20 years. But let's say someone like Varen, who has the oaths for 200 years, and then, swears off the oaths. And so that she might not have the same effect or gain the same amount of age back because she had been under oath for 200 years instead of just 20.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that seems likely. I don't know why, like in my head, stilled and burned out, you lose the slowing benefit, but maybe I'm misremembering that. I know now I'm like so confused. I don't know why that one's. I should have looked that one up before I started here, but I could have sworn like if you're burned out, then you don't have the slowing benefit any longer.
I don't believe Satella and Nan did.
Yeah, right. Like I thought that was, but I couldn't remember if people like were remarking about her age, but maybe they weren't. Maybe they were just remarking that she was there, that she was still around. So yeah, I mean, and that's a good question. If someone like Varen had like taken all the oaths away, still probably could have lived another 400 years at least. If not, like Light Blinded Fools say, 500 years, But like you're saying, doesn't go back, doesn't get like 700 years, or 600 years maybe. It still has lost some. Jordan didn't give us an equation for it, so that's the fun part. Is well, I shouldn't say that. He gives us a little bit here. Maybe on us before you go, I'm going to read this quote from his notes, and you can tell me if this affects your thought on this. So this was from, like I said, box 57 or 61, pages 9 and 10, Robert Jordan's notes. And again, make sure you take these. This might be in the Wheel of Time Companion. This might be directly reflected in the books. If it's not, you kind of got to take this with a grain of salt, everybody. So here you go. This one is under Aging in Aes Sedai. When a woman doesn't learn to channel until later in life, after the period when she would have slowed with early training, slowing takes on a different characteristic. Instead of aging simply seeming to slow down, initially there's an apparent regression in age. A woman who began the process at 30 or 35 might find a regression of 5 years, rarely more, while a woman who began at 80 years of age might achieve a rollback of as much as 30 apparent years. It could be less, but is rarely less than 20 years. This apparent age then becomes the base from which aging occurs. Since the age at which you begin channeling doesn't change the lifespan that a certain strength in the power gives, this means that women of a given strength who began training later in life will take a longer period to age 1 apparent year than will women who began training and slowed at a younger age. So, hold on. So that By the way, this kind of corrected something that I suggested, which apparently you don't. If you're like 20 when you start, you don't have a regression. He's saying that like at 30 or 35, you have a regression of 5 years. So, but this end part on us where it says, since the age at which you begin channeling doesn't change the lifespan that a certain strength in the power gives. This means that women of a given strength who begin training later in life will take a longer period to age, 1 apparent year, than will women who began training and slowed at a younger age. So I'm trying to kind of mix.
Yeah.
I'm trying to mix the oath rod in here, and how does that pair up to that? So yeah, I guess with Varen, I guess what you're saying here is, let's say Varen started channeling when she was 80. Technically, she would actually not age as fast as someone that started channeling when they were 20. However, with the oath rod, still gonna not gonna regress back to that, like the beginning of the oath rod time, perhaps, but still gets the full channeling up to what, the age that they would have normally if they hadn't had the oath rod. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know. This is like kind of confusing.
It's like, if you're gonna live 800 years, but now from a physical appearance, that gets compressed into 20 to 100 years or something, and where you land up into how you look within that spectrum depends on when you started channeling. And when you take the oaths, you're going to have that regression because you would look younger to fit that better, to fit that kind of that spectrum better.
This is ridiculous. I love it. Okay, thanks for calling in, man. And by the way, join it. Everyone out there, Anas will be hosting in 2 weeks, so be on the lookout for. Do you want to announce it right now? Do you know what it's going to be? What everyone can expect? Are you still thinking about it?
I have a couple of thoughts that I need to still need to still. So I'm not gonna give away anything right now.
Okay, that was a little bit of a tease. I do. You guys got to be here in 2 weeks, but I'm sure you'll find out before then. Maybe for next week's episode, I'll be able to announce that, and be on the lookout for Innkeeper on Us's next episode. Have a good one, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
I like this. I agree. Koala Sedai, my head is now hurting. I agree. So this is how I understood last quote, Morgan, and you tell me if I'm wrong here. Basically, let's say we have the same strength in the one power. I start channeling when I'm 20, you start channeling when you're 40. If nothing takes us out, you just might look a little older, but we'll eventually match each other's pace and will die about the same time. That's how I understood that last quote, where he was saying that just because you started channeling later doesn't mean you lose the advantage of the lifespan that you would have had if you had started channeling earlier. It just means you are actually going to age even slower than someone that started channeling younger. Is that how you understood it?
I guess, yeah. I don't know. I don't know that I appreciate the logic of it very well. It kind of makes me feel like if you started later,
we need like a graph that shows like the different aging. That's how I understand. I'm gonna read this like last thing, and then we can move on to the next quote. That's how I understood this to say, since the age at which you begin channeling doesn't change the lifespan that a certain strength in the power gives. This means that women of a given strength who begin training later in life will take a longer period to age 1 apparent year than will women who began training and slowed at a younger age.
Okay, yeah.
That's how I'm.
Yeah, that's how I see it.
I'm curious how long the regression takes, because you have to go backwards first and then start going forwards again.
Yeah.
Definitely. It sounds like it would take longer for you to catch up.
You just wake up with the regression just happens. That's the fountain of youth moment. Okay, let's bring our next caller in, and then, like I said, we'll tackle a couple more quotes, and we'll end this out for tonight, and hopefully have you all just kind of like, what did we even just hear? That's what I wanted. That's what I want the outcome here. Hey, welcome to the Dusty Wheel. Who's this?
great Innkeeper. As always, I raise my
Norm.
glass to you, sir.
Cheers, man. Cheers.
To our guests, I raise my glass to you, ladies, and to what's up in chat. What's up?
Hey, Norm.
Good to hear from you, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. A little tired, but I'm living.
So, what do you think? Have we confused you? Do you know all these things, or do you feel like you're lost now?
You know, I already graduated college. I didn't need to go to grad school twice in my lifetime. So,
You're welcome.
Hey, so you see, here's my question. Okay, since Cad Swain is the Betty White of the Aes Sedai, you know, she's like 942 years old and still probably doesn't look a day over 50. What happens with her when she? Okay. Does Egwene? Okay, first off, was she able to tell the Aes Sedai before the last battle about the kin and the whole aging thing and how the oath wad cuts your age in half or something like that, and then the whole retirement thing that she was thinking about and all that? Do you think she was able to tell the Aes Sedai about that? And then if she did, would Cad Swain still be on board with that to join in? And then when Cad Swain does eventually retire, does she go back to being only 235 years old as opposed to plus 900? I mean, my brain hurts. I'm sorry. Ow.
So good questions. Pevara, I know you did some searching on like the answers. I thought I saw an answer about this. Do you have an answer for Norm on this question? In the fourth age, are they aware of this? Is this something that, has been passed on?
I would think that at the very least, just trying to go through everything one by one, that they definitely know about the kid because Kid are involved in the last battle. I would imagine that she has told some people, and yes, I think Cad Swain would absolutely be down for removing the oaths and retiring. She does not seem like a person who would go to death willingly if she could help it.
Yeah, because as far as we know, Cad Swain, I think Jordan's answer is Cad Swain and Varen, they both have sworn oaths. So Cad Swain has something to gain here from choosing it. This is Brandon says, let's see. I thought he said something here like, someone asked, Brandon, does the oath rod continue to be used in the fourth age? If so, for what purpose? So far as I know, yes, and for the same purpose. Do other groups start using the rod too? Do you think the Aes Sedai are likely that others manhandle one of their Terangreal? They asked, did men start to use the oath rod too, or did it continue to be only women? No men. Neither group would like that. The Ashermen are not male Aes Sedai. RJ was clear about this in his notes. Will the White Tower and Black Towers unite? I thought I saw some other, maybe that wasn't it. I thought I saw something that said this was going to be a source of controversy in the fourth age, that they were going to be aware of it. So I could be wrong. But yeah, I would imagine the fourth age they do have this knowledge or learn it. So that'd be my answer for you, Norm. And Cad Swain, yeah, I think Cad Swain would have a hard time here. And I don't know, Morgan, do you think Cad Swain would find this out and be like, okay, I'm getting rid of the oaths? Or do you think Cad Swain's be like, screw it, the world doesn't need 800-year-old channelers?
I feel like Cad Swain is one of those people where I can't imagine that she would tolerate retiring into the kin very well, because she wouldn't like the idea of being, low on the pecking order. But I can 100% see her unswearing the oaths and retiring as an Aes Sedai and going off and doing her own thing at that point, and not caring about, what else. Basically kind of taking the opportunity of being like, if you want, you can unswear the oaths and then go off and, serve the tower still. And if the expectation is that, well, you're supposed to retire into the kin, she would do whatever she felt like at that point. And I can 100% see her doing that.
Yes, I agree.
Well, Norm, it's great to hear your voice, man. I hope you are doing well. And thank you very much for calling, and have a wonderful evening. Cheers, my friend. Cheers.
Cheers, and hey, just for the record, Cad Swain would probably be going to an Indian casino and just playing bingo all day. So,
you think Cad Swain would just play bingo? Bingo is her retirement?
Yeah.
Okay, man. Sounds good. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Later.
See you, man. Bye-bye. I don't see Codswain retiring in a casino. I just don't think I don't see it happening.
Doesn't strike me as her style.
No Garden said, did I just hear that there were male Aes Sedai and Ashaman in RJ's plans? No, Brandon was saying that Jordan was very clear there were not male Aes Sedai coming in the Fourth Age. At least that's what I remember Brandon saying. But that they would still potentially unite in some, or like there would not, they wouldn't become male Aes Sedai, but there might be kind of a connection between the towers. So that's how I understood it. Sorry, did either of you have a comment before we moved on? Okay, so we have 3 quotes and 1 minute. No, I'm just kidding. So we're going to go through these 3 quotes. I think they're a lot of fun, and then we can kind of wrap up here and give you both your evenings back. So this one I thought was a lot of fun. This is from his notes, again, box 57 or 61, page 190. And this is an example of Robert Jordan still working out the details around Oath Rod and agelessness. So I thought this was a fun one to include. This is under Oath Rod and agelessness. There was no agelessness during the War of the Shadows, of course. Little or none, probably none. During Compact of the 10 Nations, there was only one oath at first. Female Aes Sedai probably began taking it during the breaking. Maybe not. Maybe later. The oath about using the one power as a weapon, if they did so, knowing the effects, they had to have some strong motivation. Later women raised were not told, perhaps, and so knowledge of the effect was lost. Check the Aes Sedai seen during the Age of Legends. That is, during Rand's jaunt back. I love this thing. Like, I love these little kind of. He's still like. I love when he's like, maybe not, maybe later. You know, he's still working it out. He's still going through it. And by the way, we're about to read a quote that top line is kind of misleading to some other comment that he made. Any comment about this, Morgan or Pevara, before we move on?
I'm wondering when they decided to start taking the oath about lying and God, what's the other one? Making weapons.
Yeah, I think they said the weapons was first. Yeah, like what is the actual date that he, or as compared to him saying, oh, when?
Yeah, it's saying that they first took the oath about not using the power as a weapon, but when did they decide to add, we're not going to make weapons anymore, and we're not going to lie? I think
I saw that also in the notes too, or it might have been the Wheel of Time Companion that talks about it. I can't remember. I think it's there. So yeah, it's a good question. I think the second oath is the first oath. I think it was like the oath about the one power as a weapon, I think is the second oath they take, but it is the first oath that actually was instituted. I think
the one power as a weapon is the third oath.
It's the third oath?
Yeah.
Okay. So I thought he read something where he said the second oath was the first oath, but now I don't know. That's a good question.
The third oath was the first oath.
Yeah, like which oath was actually? I don't have the order. That's a good question. Pevara, any comment on that one before we move on?
Just that I thought that they started taking, or they may have added the third oath during the Trolloc Wars, as a means for getting the nations to trust them. I seem to recall that. Yeah,
that's what I thought I did. Light-Blinded Fool says, I think the lying is the first oath. And I can't remember, like the order is different than the order we get now. Like I know that to be true, but I just don't remember. I don't know what that order is. So, like Koala said, I said Rand's retrospectoscope trip.
Retrospectoscope trip.
Here's some fun. These next two are related to us. It's in that same Oath Rod Agelessness section, and this is under a subheading of the following is known only to the Forsaken and perhaps not fully to all of them. Which again, I just love that. Again, Jordan's working through things. Said one effect was the shortening of lifespan. Ordinary people in that time could expect to live 200 years. Aes Sedai as much as 800. Life expectancy on being bound depended in part on how old you were, of course. Someone who could not channel, bound in their 20s, could not expect to see 100. Bound later at, say, 100, would live maybe another 20 to 25 years. Bound at 150 probably would live no more than another 5. A very strong channeler bound in the first 50 to 70 years of life could not expect to live much beyond 400, if that. Bound at 300 to 400 would have another 50 to 100 years left at most, while bound later in life would have as little as 5 to 10 years remaining. So, that's, again, kind of I can't remember if this is in line with what we see in the books or not. But I always thought when they said 300, I didn't think about it this way. And maybe I've just always, when we say they live like 300 years, is that 300 years at the most past that's when they start slowing? In other words, because they kind of was suggesting like a very strong channeler bound in the first 50 to 70 years of life could not expect to live much beyond 400. So what I understood that to be was, okay, it's 300, like the oath rod is shortening your lifespan from the moment that you get it to the maximum amount. Because I first thought maybe they could only get to 300 years of age, but this suggests that he's thinking different. But this could be like, again, these are his notes, could be not what's actual canon in the book. So that's where I'm a little bit confused. Again, these things kind of, they're all a little bit confusing there. This last part, I want to read this one, and I think this answers the first question. No, not answers it, but again, this is from his notes. So how you read this, and maybe Morgan, if you want to read our last quote here.
Sure.
And this one also is from page 191, and this one's fun. Again, under that same subheading, the following is known only to the Forsaken, and perhaps not fully to all of them.
In the Age of Legends, the ageless look was thus exceedingly rare, the mark of a multiply convicted criminal, a very uncommon individual. This is one thing definitely not known to all of the Forsaken because of the rarity of people having to be bound more than once during the Age of Legends.
So that, I don't know if it seems to conflict with, like, this didn't happen back then. So this seems like it could be like an old idea of his. I mean, obviously they were bound once, but he's saying here, there was exceedingly rare cases where, so maybe one of the Forsaken had ever known of a case that the agelessness or the ageless look was actually connected to the oath rod. Where do the books, Morgan, to you suggest that they're seeing the ageless look and they recognize the ageless look? Or do the books suggest to you that they are aware that they take oaths because they're aware of the Black Aja and they're aware of that process, and they just know they take oaths off an oath rod, and that's why they connect them with criminals? Like, how do you connect that in the books?
I think that they know just because they take the oaths that is them binding themselves like criminals. I would guess that at least one of the Forsaken, depending upon, because they were all Aes Sedai, and I know in the Age of Legends that being an Aes Sedai didn't necessarily mean that you were particularly involved in, any big Aes Sedai type things.
Right.
But some of them must have been. Some of them had earned third names and were, more involved in, political or, important type work that they did. And so presumably some of that must have been inside the, auspices of courts or just, dealing with important people or situations where people, might have been, having to deal out punishment for against people who did bad things. And so they might, at least one of them might have come across a case where someone had to be, was engaged in incredibly criminal behavior where they had to be bound on multiple occasions. But
I think that somebody just happened to be aware of it, but it wouldn't be something that everyone would even notice. Something that's in like a science book somewhere, or like why is this happening to this one? Like the rare things that happen to people, and you're like, you didn't even know this rare disease, if you will, existed.
Yeah,
it only happens to 10 people ever, or something.
But it would be one of those things where if you engage in serious criminality, it becomes very known because everybody is like, whoa, obviously I need to stay away from that person because, if somebody looks ageless, then it's a sign that they're a creep. Has somebody mentioned that Aes Sedai fall into the uncanny valley? Maybe that was the point back in the Age of Legends, is they were supposed to unsettle you and let you know that this isn't a nice person and you should stay away.
Well, it's funny because Jordan does play with those ideas, right? Like they're the servants of all, and then in the third age he turns them into the second age's criminals, right? It's like, but they're doing it for the benefit of everyone, and they're losing the ability of these long lives hoping to gain the trust of a populace after the breaking, and that what the effects are and what this was previously is even lost to them. And all of a sudden, you have that second age view from the Forsaken. I love that. I love that the Forsaken are like, this is really weird and stupid.
Yeah, we're like, we're judging your choices.
We are
It's
judging,
like,
yeah,
when the
exactly.
Forsaken judge your life choices, it's not good.
Well, Pevara, how did this go? This is your first time here. Was there any like final thoughts you had you wanted to share, or final questions that you're like still contemplating about the slowing, Oath Rod, and the agelessness?
I feel like I know less about it now than I did when I started. But
We've
it
done our
was-
job. We've done our job
it
well
was-
then.
It was really interesting. I was especially interested in the Age of Legends use of the Oath Rods and how that worked for criminals and marking them out. That was something
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought of before I started doing research for tonight.
Yeah, it is funny. Like, this is hopefully. I should have started off by like just declaring all the facts. Sometimes I do that. Hopefully, if you've watched this long, you're not like, no, I don't believe the Oath Rod has anything to do with agelessness. Because if that's where you're at right now, then you really missed something. Because they are directly tied. Like,
Sorry,
the Oath.
go back and read the material again.
Yeah, exactly. The Oath Rod is the thing that causes agelessness, and it's the 3 oaths that Robert Jordan thought about doing. 2 oaths maybe, but no, it's 3 oaths, and you will have that ageless look. It does take some time, for some reason, stronger channelers faster to the ageless look, and slowing. That is a completely separate concept, but they both somewhat deal in age, in lifespans, and so understandably, all of us have been somewhat confused over the years when we talk about this topic.
I wonder if how sincerely you swear affects how fast you get there.
Totally.
You're crossing your fingers behind your
Yeah,
back. when you
how
do
much
Does
do
that
you
change
mean
it?
it?
There was some comment he made. It was like about in the notes about the Black Aja and recruiting and the oaths, and I can't remember what it was, but I think it had to do with like how you swore your oaths. It was like they could tell if you were really into it. If you weren't, they just let you. They took you out. I like this comment by Remo Mills. 4 questions answered, 25 new questions gained. If that's not exactly what we're here for, then I don't know what it is. Pevara, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, just that you just made a good point that the Black Aja do unswear their oaths and then re-swear, and their lifespans are shortened. So I guess that answers that question that we had earlier.
Oh, yeah. Like they unswear them and then they re-swear, and they basically have the same. Yeah, I can't get over the fact that like if you re-swear the same oath, somehow it's this is the thing I wish Jordan would have given us like a clue. Like, what is the awareness? like what is aware? Is it your brain? It's like bound in your mind somewhere in your body, and your body's just like, nope, we checked that box already. We're good. We don't need the pain of that one. I just love that. So, Breaker just said, Dusty Wheel, Semirog notes that the Oath Rod cuts her lifespan in half while she's torturing Cabriana.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And that's gonna be a little bit different for each person when they swear their oaths and how much they can channel, because how strong you are in channeling, and even that affects a non-channeler. Like Jordan was basically saying, if you're only going to live to 100 and you get an oath when you're 75, then you basically won't live more than 5 years. There's a quick effect, and that's what I mean is it's not giving you a disease, or is it? Like, how is it killing you? Like, is it just a metaphysical like
Maybe.
clock, and it just ticks, and once it gets to the end of like, there's like a number in your mind, and it's just like boop, and you just fall over dead in that moment. That's the whole thing. It's like, what is the mechanism of its death? Is it like
it messes with your organs if it messes with your face? Maybe it smooths your heart out or something.
But he's not like saying like you die of like cancer. You know what I mean? It's just like your lifespan is cut short. But yeah, maybe it's like
heart damage, something like that. I don't know.
Your heart just stops. Yeah, I could take that.
Well, when Guitarra passes in the beginning of New Spring, it's just all of a sudden she just takes a deep gasping breath and then she's gone. She doesn't die of a disease. And Maureen comments that that's that's pretty common when an Aes Sedai lives out her natural life.
The natural life, although it's unnatural. Yeah, that's interesting.
It feels like it's unnatural. But it's like if the oaths mess with your face, I'm guessing it messes with other parts, so it might mess with your internal organs as well. So maybe they just are not as robust at that point, or whatever robustness is given to them by the one power it counteracts that.
Yeah, it's an interesting. This we definitely like. I hope, like it was said, 4 questions answered, and then 25 questions unanswered now. So hopefully y'all enjoyed that. This was a fun discussion. There's so much. There's a lot. This is the kind of discussion I love at JordanCon, where you can just be like, okay, let's talk. What is happening to the body? I don't think we have definitely not exhausted all the potential of like what are the metaphysical, physical things that are happening to create this. So I'm looking forward. If you've watched this far, please leave some comments in the video after this. Let us know what you thought. If you want us to do even a deeper dive on this, is there something you want us to come back and talk about? If you're here next week, we're going to be talking about the Ailfin, Elfin, Sintul, and the Tower of Genji. So is it Genji? Genji, whatever it is. Exactly. It's a pronunciation. That's what we do around here at the Wheel of Time. Pevara, thank you so much for being a first-time guest here. Morgan, as always, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me
This
back.
was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me.
I'm always like, oh my gosh, we're going to get really geeky. And then I love everyone in chat just going right along with us. So that was a blast, everybody. As always, as we say around here, good night from the Dusty Wheel and smash to black.
Welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel.
You went right to kill it. Look at you. You're already. You're just done. I mean, this is like, this is one
really
of the
well.
biggest scenes.
And now I'm like, great, my turn.
And if you don't like that, you want to say, well, Robert Jordan could have made the 2 rivers all white. He could have, but he didn't. So
Just complimented me on my dress, and as you can clearly see, I'm not wearing one.
I see Nakomi as something along the lines of a Shida Haran analog.
it does make sense why it outlasted the breaking.
Yeah.
See, this is why I have Therese in the show, because she's going to correct everything that
Hey everybody, welcome to the Dusty Wheel Show. What? Meme Off Challenge. Yay!
Pair of like baby face mounted on like a huge body. So like all
This
of
is
a
not
sudden,
just
it's like,
a traditional fantasy, right? There are sci-fi
And
elements.
just a
for
moment
those that are
ago,
kind of interested.
Rafe tweeted something. So let me get my guests in here with me. And
Probably, I would say, put in 70, 80% of the work. I got to be over the shoulder and be like, no,